Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration, your DC Spotlight for the week of December 4th, 2024. Happy, healthy holiday season to all those who celebrate. On that note, both with DC and with the Independents this week, a lot of holiday books out there, a lot of specials. Hope everybody had a chance to check out my episode with Jim Kruger earlier this week. He's got a holiday book out with a bunch of short stories that are really awesome. Um, Big week for DC as the All-In era continues. 14 books this week. Again, I'm going to give my top five-ish. Rocky's going to give his top five-ish. And then there's four other books that we're just going to just mention in case you want to check them out. I mean, I did read everything, but yeah, some of them were only okay. So, man, we really hit that high water mark a couple weeks ago, Rocky, where every single book was great. I was a little underwhelmed this week. I got to be honest. Nothing that really blew me away. A couple standouts, but yeah, a lot of it was just okay, just okay this week. So I don't know. What did you think of the week overall?
Yeah, I thought it was. Actually, five was a nice round number that I enjoyed. There was probably three, maybe as little as three that I thought that I quite enjoyed. But picking five, picking two more was a little bit of a challenge, but I managed to do it. But yeah, it was a kind of a mediocre week, but definitely some standouts, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I think like if I look at the five I'm going to talk about, I'm probably right there with you, like three or four that I would have talked about anyway. But then there's a couple on your list that I probably would have picked had you not. But anyway, let's kick it off with one that does make my list. It's Batman, Santa Claus, Silent Night Returns, issue number 2. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a nitpick, and it's a complaint I've had before. I'm flipping through this digital copy trying to find the credits page, so we can give credit where credit is due. It's a 20-page comic, and the credits are on page 11. So it's not at the beginning of the book. It's not at the end. It really irritates. Like, what is the point of that? Like that. Could you imagine if you're watching a TV show and like halfway through was when they played the credit? Like literally halfway through is when they played the credit. Like I don't understand. Like, it's so stupid. There's no need for it. It's really really dumb. I just don't get it. It's not like there's a in story reason. I don't know. It just feels lazy to me. So anyway, the story itself, written by Jeff Parker, art by Lucas Kettner and Michelle Bandini, colors by Marcelo Maiello, letters by Pat Brose. So it's okay. I'm not enjoying this one as much as I enjoyed the story last year. Last year, I think I said this before, it felt a little more tied into kind of the holiday season with a bunch of the heroes meeting Santa for the first time. Oh my God, he's real, sort of thing. And it really felt like it had a lot of holiday spirit. This just feels like sort of a regular, generic DC story, just a DC superhero story with quite a few villains showing up. And we have Zatanna, we have Damien, and then we have Santa Claus. Um, but a lot of villains. And uh, it just so happens to have Santa Claus in it. It doesn't have that same feeling of capturing the holiday feel or the time of the season that last year's did. So I'm a little disappointed by that. The art is fantastic. The color work is really great. I mean, Gentleman Ghost is there. He's one of my favorite villains. I love his visual. But yeah, this is only okay. It did make my list, but it's one of those that probably wouldn't, had if I was just picking my pure top five, and not, we're dividing them up between us, if you will. But the art is really strong, and it's only 2 issues in. There's 3 issues to go, I think. So there's plenty of time for it to sort of pick up the pace and kind of pull me in, but it hasn't done so yet. Anything to add to that?
Not really. I might be enjoying it. I suspect just from your tone and your level of excitement, I'm probably enjoying it maybe a little bit more than you. I do like the fact. I want to give Jeff Parker some credit for. He's definitely incorporating a lot of characters that I wouldn't have expected him to incorporate in the DC universe. And one great thing about these Christmas stories is that it is an opportunity to introduce readers to not only a Christmas story for the DC universe, but getting them some exposure in a place they wouldn't expect, to some characters that they're not normally used to seeing. In addition to the trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So it's, in that respect, for holiday season, it's a decent read.
Yeah, again, a lot of holiday books this week, which it's first week of December, so I guess that's to be expected. But yeah, the quality sure does vary from book to book. All right, next up we have a book that is on your list. It's Batgirl #2, written by Tate Bromble. Takeshi Miyazawa is the artist. Mike Spicer on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. Give us your thoughts.
Well, I'm a huge Cassandra Cain fan. I don't think that, I think I've said that quite a few times in the past, and this it's really great to see. Like, I was happy. The opening issue, I was happy just to see Cassandra Cain and Lady Shiva together again. Here we get some continue. I like the character work here. It's, again, we're not breaking any new ground here. Ultimately, we do. This is still basically a story where a bunch of ninjas are attacking Cassandra Cain and Lady Shiva, but we're finally getting a little bit more of a backstory here involving the unburied and the unseen, and we meet some of Cassandra Cain's own family that she developed in Gotham. The Babao, I think that's how you say her name, or Babe or Babao, who is an Asian woman who works at a local restaurant, but is also an expert in martial arts. Who basically her and Lady Shiva go to sing sanctuary as they're sort of hiding from the unseen that are after them. And there's this character Calden, the Unseen, who's got a particular power set. He's particularly powerful because he has the ability. He's such a good fighter that neither Lady Shiva nor Cassandra Cain are capable of reading his body language, which is really interesting, because imagine opening a book and seeing a bunch of words in the book but not being able to read it. So even, and I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, because the whole idea of being able to read body language is a crazy concept, but that's the central conceit of Lady Shiva and Cassandra Cain. But what is it about? I mean, imagine not being able to read somebody's body language, that they're literally, why is that? How do you move in a different language that even Cassandra Cain and Lady Shiva, experts in all forms of martial arts, can't read? That's particularly interesting. That's fascinating. I don't really know what that means, and I don't know how you can beat that or overcome that, but I like that Tate Bromble sort of made that an obstacle for them to overcome. I love the fact that Lady Shiva wants to try to connect with her daughter, and she gets some advice from Babo or Babe in order to try to do that. The idea of using force and flow, bending not breaking, martial arts concepts imbued with a little bit of psychology to help Lady Shiva connect to Cassandra. Because let's face it, Lady Shiva is a great martial artist, but she's not exactly the motherly type. So any bit of motherly advice to Lady Shiva, she'd probably do well to listen to it. At the end, it doesn't bode too well for Lady Shiva and Cassandra. They manage to escape, but their friends appear to be in mortal danger from the ninja forces of the unseen. So the plot thickens, the mystery deepens in terms of exactly what the background is with the unseen. We get a little bit of a background flowing with this blue flower, which they're looking for which will improve their inner power of their chi power. But for the most part, it's martial arts. It's martial arts concepts. It's Lady Shiva. It's Cassandra Cain. If you're fans of the characters, you're gonna love this series. And I quite enjoyed this second issue. Do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it's the look on Cassandra's face at the end. And these guys are the unseen. Like, is she blind? Can she not see? I mean, there's got to be some significance to the way she looks in that final panel. It was kind of interesting. So yeah, I mean, I'm not as anywhere near as big of a fan of these characters as you, and I didn't quite enjoy this issue as much as the first issue, because it felt very transitional, just kind of moving the characters around on the board, but not really getting any new information, other than a new villain, or the champion of the unseen or what have you. But what did really impress me was, for as much action, because half the book is fight scene. For as much action as there is, it didn't feel like there was a lot of action. It actually felt like the majority of the book was focused on the relationship between Lady Shiva and Batgirl, um, which I thought was really interesting. The strength of it being the characterization and their relationship. Even though the majority of the book is fighting, it didn't feel like that because of the way Tate Bromble structured the story. So even in some of the fight scenes, we're getting some narration from Lady Shiva where she's talking about her feelings for her daughter, and then Ba Bao, even in the midst of the fight, kind of giving advice to Lady Shiva. So I think that's the point of this issue, right? To continue to really establish that relationship and give us some real context for what that relationship is like, and for people that are familiar with it, and then for people that are not familiar with it, that they're being introduced to it in a very detailed type way. So I was pretty impressed with the character work from Tate Bromble. So all right, up next we have Birds of Prey number 16. This is from writer Kelly Thompson. Sami Basri handles the art. Vicente Cifuentes handles the inks, pages 3 through 20, and then Adriana Lucas on colors and Clayton Cowell on letters. This was interesting. So when I went to read this, and I had thought that I had read it before, but I was like, wait, did this come out last week? I swear that I read this before. So, I say all that to say it didn't feel like it moved the story forward a lot. And what happens in this issue is sort of exactly what I expected to happen. Um, with the possible exception of Cassandra Cain, who, we saw last issue, she was like put in this, lower dungeon, or they say the bowels of the Ninth Day Corporation, and we know there's some Amazonian down there who's been mutated in some way, and so you're expecting this big brutal fight, but actually what happens is she breaks this control collar that's on this Amazon, who, for lack of a better term, looks like a dog. I mean, looks like a anthropomorphic dog. I'm not even 100% sure if it is an Amazon. Maybe it is a dog that was infused with, Amazon
Yeah.
genes in some way, and has
It's
become, more human like. Like I wasn't
yeah.
100%
Well,
sure. Is it an
she
Amazon
called
that?
it Bella. She referred to the dog as Bella, so I think that's an Amazon named Bella. I think you're right. It is an Amazon.
Yeah, but it could. I mean, it could go either way. It was a dog that
Yeah.
got, you know, Amazon genes and is now more human, or it's an Amazon that was human and got mixed with dog. Like, I don't know. I think it was a dog and got mixed with Amazon, but who knows? But either
Yeah.
way, Cassandra befriends the dog. They attack the Ninth Day. They get a message out to the other birds of prey. They're on their way to try to rescue her. And as you would expect, the poo hits the fan, and a lot of action. What Kelly Thompson is sort of known for, which is the interactions and the dialogue between the different members of the Birds of Prey, is definitely here. Um, if I had any complaint, most of the issues has like this pink overtone. I'm not sure what the point of that is. It was a little distracting, to be honest with you. Like the entire issue is pink. Um, like even when the birds of prey show up and they're fighting, all the screens, the video screens and surveillance or whatever are pink, and so I get that they're shining pink light, and that's why everything looks pink. But it just seems like a strange choice. Even the smoke that's coming up is pink. I didn't understand. I didn't understand that. Like, why the heck is everything pink? Adriana Lucas is a fantastically talented colorist. So I just didn't understand that. So, but relatively quick read because of all the action. I am still enjoying this arc more than I've enjoyed the previous couple arcs of Birds of Prey. So, yeah, all in all, a solid issue, and curious to find out more about this Bella character. Is it a dog Amazon or an Amazon dog? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Just that if you're a Cassandra Cain fan, you're gonna love this week because you got Batgirl and you got Cassandra Cain kicking some butt here, and something happens to Cassandra Cain in this issue that people might find particularly interesting, and a nice tease for next issue of Big Barda versus uh, uh, a steroided up looking Cassandra Cain. So Cassandra Cain fans, you definitely want to check this issue of BoP out. BoP out.
Yep. Next up, we have DC Horror Presents issue number 2. This is not on either of our lists, and I mean, the last thing I want to do is read like horror stories around Christmas time. Now, don't get me wrong, Christmas has a lot of its roots in like pagan rituals and whatever, and it's fine to have like ghost stories and creepy stories and what have you. But out and out horror, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of it anyway. So I just like flipped through this, and it didn't look like anything that really interested me. But there's 2 stories here. The first one's Living Doll, written by Latoya Morgan with art by Tom Derenick and Walt Barna, with colors by Nick Filardi and letters by Simon Bolin. And then there's a second story. It's more of a Penguin story that's written by Aaron Sagers, pencils and inks by Ryan Kelly, colors by Dee Cunniffe, and letters by Simon Bolin. So if you're so inclined, you can check those out. I'm not sure who is asking for a DC horror anthology, but we have one week in and week out regardless. But next up, we have Batman 155. This one's on Rocky's list. It's The Dying City Part 3, written by Chip Zdarsky. Art is by Jorge Fornes, colors by Tomeu More, and letters by Clayton Cowles. Give us your thoughts on this one.
Well, we have Chip Zdarsky in progressing this Batman tale has he dropped sort of a huge revelation last issue. Commissioner Gordon is the prime suspect in the murder of Mayor Nakano. And it was revealed last issue that he was having an affair with Mayor Nakano's wife, Kaito. And I probably said that wrong. But in any event, this issue, I actually thought, this issue, this is part 3 of a story arc called The Dying City. This and the art by... what is it? Art by Jorge Fornes. I thought he did a pretty good job of showing we kind of got the origin of how it was that Jim Gordon, who we think of Jim Gordon as such a strong moral character with a strong moral center that we all respect. And what Chip Zdarsky does very well here is that he makes it clear that Batman himself respects Jim Gordon, and Batman himself does not want to believe that Jim Gordon is guilty of murdering Mayor Nakano. And it's almost like because Jim Gordon is someone who Batman considers to be the only good man he knows, because virtually everyone, Batman knows lots of good people, but Jim Gordon in particular is someone is one of those fixtures of Gotham City. He's one of those few people involved in law enforcement that hasn't, in one sense or another, become corrupted. I mean, even Harvey Bullock, who's in this issue, has a checkered past as a member of the Gotham PD, and so. But in any event, this does a really good job of showing how it was that how Jim Gordon and the mayor's wife got together. And ironically enough, she hired Jim Gordon as a PI to spy on her husband, the mayor, thinking that her husband, the mayor, was cheating on her, but he wasn't. Ironically, then she starts cheating on her husband, the mayor, with Jim Gordon. And one thing leads to another. There's an altercation between Jim Gordon and Mayor Nakano. Mayor Nakano was shot and killed. And the mystery builds. And I won't spoil it. Suffice to say that Batman discovers the truth, and how he discovers the truth, well, it involves the Riddler, it involves some detective work, and I thought it worked pretty well. I thought that there was a lot of substance in this issue. The story did move forward, and it involves the Court of Owls. It involves Batman's or Bruce Wayne's alleged brother, Leonid Cole. Leonid Cole is his name, and Bruce Wayne meets up with his alleged brother, Leonid Cole, and puts a tracking beacon on him. And it's just, and the Riddler plays his hand reveals a little bit more of his hand. Nigma, surprise, surprise, he doesn't want to merge with Wayne Tech. He wants to literally acquire it, take it over, and do with it as he will. And so the machinations of the Riddler, his true motives, are slowly becoming revealed. And I thought this was a very well put together issue. It really moved the story forward. And I thought all the pieces moving together in a very interesting way. I thought this was very well done. run. I quite enjoyed it. And just as a quick aside, I know just my general feeling. I get a sense that a lot of people are not. Chip Zdarsky's Batman run has not been as well received as perhaps as some other Batman runs. And I think that I think it's. I'd be inclined to defend it. I have actually enjoyed it. The only thing I didn't enjoy was really the Gotham War. But beyond that, I think Chip Zdarsky's brought sort of a fresh, different perspective on Batman. And if you eliminate Gotham War, I think he's done a fairly consistent job. And I've been enjoying I've been particularly enjoying this Dying City story arc. So, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, Leonid Cole is not Bruce Wayne's brother. So we saw Leonid Cole. I think last issue or maybe the first issue of this story arc, and he is the current leader of the Court of Owls. So he was meeting with the deputy mayor at the time, whining and dining, and or Batman showed up, I should say, and wondering what's going on with the whole Enigma tech and trying to take over and what have you. And it's very clear that that Cole is, behind what's going on, behind a lot of the corruption, behind the, takeover of or attempted takeover of Wayne Tech or whatever. So yeah, Leonid Cole, bad guy, and
Right, right.
not necessarily trying to hide it. Like he knows that Batman knows who he is and that sort of thing. So his brother, I can't remember his first name, but it's Purefrid. And so yeah, Bruce Wayne does
Right.
go to try to talk to the guy. Cull is there, which, again, he's involved. He introduces himself to Bruce Wayne, not realizing that they've already met, when Bruce was Batman. But obviously Bruce knows that Cull is part of the Court of Owls and what have you. So it is this, this political story, political intrigue, trying to control the city through legitimate means with Vandal Savage as the police commissioner. We know he's a villain with this deputy mayor who seems to be corrupt through and through now taking over. Clear that Gordon was not responsible for his actions. Even if he did pull the trigger, he wasn't the one who was really behind it. Mad Hatter was controlling him, brainwashing him. Still doesn't necessarily explain, like maybe he was being controlled when he pulled the gun on Batman last issue as well, which just felt wildly out of character. So yeah, I mean, I can understand why some people would not be big fans of the Zdarsky run. He's like, man, nothing is sacred. I don't care if everybody loves Jim Gordon and he's been, this pillar of righteousness in the Batman comic for all time. I'm gonna dirty him up a little bit. But we do have an in-story reason, and it makes sense, the Mad Hatter mind controlling him or what have you. But it definitely feels like Bruce is, I wouldn't say he's in over his head, but he's got a lot going up against him, right? Like early on, one of the things that was a hallmark of Zdarsky's run was just how much crap he was throwing at Batman, and Batman kind of wasn't in his right mind. And we saw that during the failsafe run and whatnot, and there was reasons for that. And then physically, he wasn't the best either. Got his hand chopped off, and he was really suffering. And it made for some interesting stories and drama. Like Batman, in a lot of ways, felt defeated, and then that colored his outlook and kind of influenced his actions in the Joker War, what have you. So he's come out the other side of that stronger and better and a little more closely resembling the Batman that we have come to know. But now he's getting piled on in a completely different way, right? Like it's not attacking his mental state or beating him down physically. It's sort of attacking his legacy as Bruce Wayne, and he's being overwhelmed. He doesn't have a lot of allies. His strongest ally, Commissioner Gordon, no, he's not commissioner anymore, but his strongest ally, Jim Gordon, is even under fire in this latest arc. So it's good storytelling from Zdarsky. I wonder if he would be pulling out all the stops to this extent if it wasn't for the fact that this is his last arc on the book. And so he wants to go out with a bang. Would he have spaced some of this stuff out? Would he have done the Nigmatech story and then the Court of Owls story, or the Nigmatech story and then something else, or or was this always his plan to put all these different obstacles in Bruce's way at the same time? Be interesting to talk to him about that. But yeah, the Jorge Fornes art is fantastic. Look forward to learning more about who this Pure Fora guy. I don't even think we've seen him yet. We've only heard his name. I think it's mentioned he works as a nurse or something. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Like, does he even exist? Is he somebody that's made up? Is he, a talent in disguise? I mean, who knows who this guy is? So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But yeah, I agree with you that I think the Zdarsky run on Batman is a little underrated, and I feel like that's partly just because of how it got started. I mean, Zdarsky was coming off Daredevil, where he done a really fantastic job, and the his Batman run started off. I didn't enjoy it that much. Like, go back to that famous issue or that I just harped on over and over. Batman literally jumping from the moon, and just how ridiculous that was. So,
Yeah.
I, I think maybe some people may have dropped it, or they haven't been paying as much attention. But this is far and away the best arc that we've had. Of Zdarsky's Batman run. So yeah, he is going out with a bang. He's doing a fantastic job. So credit where credit's due. All right, up next, a book on my list. It's Action Comics number 1078, Phantoms Part 9. Written by Mark Waid, art by Clayton Henry and Michael Shelfer. Colors by Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp. We learned last issue that through the machinations of Ether in the Phantom Zone, the Earth's sun is being drained of its energy. It's going to collapse. All life on Earth as we know it is going to end. So this issue starts off. We have somebody attacking Metropolis, Grax, and we have Keenan Kong, Connor Kent, and Supergirl all there trying to fight against him. Keenan Kong and Connell just recently back from their fight out in space with the Coons. And it takes all three of them, along with John Kent, to basically stop this ship that Grax is flying from crashing in Metropolis, because none of them are strong enough to do it on their own, because the sun's radiant energy has been decreasing because of what Ether did and how he's harvesting the energy or what have you. So they're literally falling to their deaths when Superman shows up. He's back from the Phantom Zone. And they're explaining to Superman what's been going on since it's been gone. And he says, "Oh, I know. It's worse than you think." And then he goes and meets up in the Fortress of Solitude with Mr. Terrific and John Henry Irons and Tasha Irons. And they say, "Okay, well, we have this plan to, return the sun to normal, but it was predicated on the fact that you, Superman, were at full strength and you're not. So, we may have to go back to the drawing board, but there's not time for that." And Superman, being Superman, of course, is willing to sacrifice himself. So they build him some armor, and he's going to try to fly into the sun and destroy the piece of equipment that is harvesting the energy of the sun. But when that happens, when the sun's returned to normal, anybody who's in the Phantom Zone is going to be killed, and Superman can't allow that to happen. So he actually sends John and Kara out into space and says, "Okay, you're going to go to the closest planet or moon or what have you that's under a red sun, and you're going to pull everybody out of the Phantom Zone, and you'll have them, kept safe there." Where they won't have powers or what have you, because they'll be under a red sun. That way, nobody dies when we go and collapse. So it's sort of a race against time as they each head off on their missions. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's because of timing or some other reason. I guess we'll find out from Mark Waid next issue. But when Superman destroys the piece of equipment that Ether had placed in the middle of the sun, instead of the Phantom Zone prisoners going to whatever planetoid or what have you that John and Kara had found, all the prisoners from the Phantom Zone show up inside the sun as well, just like Superman does, right? And now that the sun is back to normal, they're all getting like supercharged, right? Like that, they're as close as you could possibly be to the yellow sun radiant energy that's being given off by the sun. So we're teased with prison breaks next issue. Superman's going to have to take on all the prisoners of the Phantom Zone by himself, maybe with the exception of having Mon-El to help him. And how that's going to work, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, you would hope that the rest of the members of the Superman family would show up to help as well, because all their powers should be returning to normal also. But yeah, Superman is very much outnumbered. So again, this has been a fantastic run from Mark Waid. I know John Ridley's up next for the writing assignment on Action Comics, and Waid is getting 12 issues. Excuse me. Um, but man, I just want him on. I want Action again. I'm happy to have this 12 issue, 3 months coming out weekly, and to get this big Mark Waid story. But I'm ready for like it to go back to a regular monthly schedule, so it's not so expensive, and just to have Mark Waid writing it for the next 4 or 5 years. Not that I'm not curious to see what some of these other writers do, but you have them do that somewhere else. And just give me Mark Waid on Superman because he's doing a fantastic job. And then there is the backup as well, but I'll give Rocky a chance. Anything to add about the main story?
Just that it's very interesting how Mark Waid tied in Superman's travel to Krypton's past, where he met Roseanne, where Roseanne essentially betrayed Jor-El, his father, and his father and his mother, and Roseanne's daughter is actually the head spokesman for this bottle city of Kandor, and they refuse to help Superman on his plan to deal with the Phantom Zone and save the Phantom Zone criminals, which is very interesting. So you got to wonder if, in fact, Superman did in fact change time or affect time by going back to Krypton. Did Roseanne say something that to his daughter? Or so I like how Mark Waid planted that seed there, which may bear some fruit as this story progresses. I don't know. And also, just as a quick aside, I love the fact that all those Phantom Zones escape, all those Phantom Zone criminals escaped, and because we get. I want to know who all these Phantom Zone criminals are. I want Mark, I'd like to learn more about who all these criminals are, because the potential for all these future stories. I remember there was a Phantom Zone miniseries back in the day in the 80s, and we got to learn more about who all the Phantom Zone criminals were. I would like a modern day a retelling of who are some of these villains are that are trapped in the zone, and maybe Mark Waid will give us that, but maybe that's wishful thinking. But no, I quite enjoyed this chapter. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know if Superman changed anything or not. I just kind of took it to be that, well, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, and this
Yeah.
this Bryzon, daughter of Roseanne, uh, she lives in the. I mean, I get that they're small, right? I get that they're shrunken and they don't have the powers that Superman would have in the Bottled City because there's like a red sun, projector or whatever. But they are alive when the rest of Krypton is destroyed, and they're completely provided for. They have no worries. I don't even think anybody in there has to have a job. Like they're living a charmed existence
Yeah.
with their heads in the sand. So I mean, the fact that, and I get it. It's because it's Superman, and that's like the last remnant of Krypton where he can go and be reminded of what his planet would have been like had he been able to experience it culturally growing up and what have you. And he would feel bad if he was exiled, but they can't really stop him from going. Like he's Superman, you can't stop him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would just be like, I mean, he's not going to do this because it's Superman, but I would just be like telling her off, be like, you have no say. You have absolutely no say. I don't care what you think. Like, who are you? You only like the whole reason that you guys are even alive is because of me, and you're gonna dictate to me. Like, I don't know. I mean, she's supposed to be unlikable. Credit to Mark Waid. She's extremely unlikable, just like her father was. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's purposeful, but yeah, it just, yeah, you flip her the super bird and move on with your life because she's just awful. Anyway, the backup by writer Mariko Tamaki, art by Skylar Patridge, colors by Marisa Louise, letters by Becca Carey. Not really much to add here because the story doesn't move forward much. Just kind of reiterates what we were told last issue, which is basically this prisoner who's been sentenced to death, and Supergirl's supposed to carry it out. She has destroyed worlds, but again, leaning into what we learned last issue, it's really her brother who is the destroyer of these worlds, but she has all this guilt because her brother can't access the powers that he's used to destroy these worlds unless he like physically joins hands with his sister, with this woman who thinks that she deserves to die. So uh, it's Supergirl. It's Kara. She's going to find a way out, find a way to save the girl, and probably the brother will be imprisoned in some way. So yeah, it's okay. It now that we're starting to get answers, I am enjoying it more. But sound like a broken record at this point. This is not going to be until we get the whole story and I can read it all in one sitting that I'm really going to be able to judge this appropriately. So, anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, I'm just, it's not my cup of tea. I actually was confused. I didn't even realize they were brother and sister. I guess I've just been, I haven't been rewarded or feeling that any chapters revealed anything of merit or of note. And I just don't care. And I don't even know why Power Girl's showing up. Why do you need Power Girl in this story? How did she even know where Supergirl was? I don't know who the bad guy is. I don't know why I'm supposed to care. I don't know why Superman was such a secret. All this stuff. It was just it's just been a terribly paced story. And honestly, this art doesn't really help at all with its. I'm not particularly happy with the backgrounds and the whole overall feel of it. But not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I think that the art is very moody from Skylar Patridge, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. Everybody, the page that Rocky has up there, which seems to be her brother, showing up, and he's got all these skull. I mean, he and it says death, for all. He certainly seems to be embodying death in some way. So yeah, pretty interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
if he possibly could be death, or she's death, or something. We've seen death personified over in the Marvel universe for a really long time, and we have death in the DC universe, but from Sandman, from Vertigo, it's not really the same type of character. So yeah, I mean, I have, like I said, enjoyed it more as it's gone along, and I'm curious. I'm pulled in enough now to where I care, and I want to know what's going to happen. So I guess that's an improvement. Anyway, up next we have DC Horror presents Creature Commandos #3. This is on Rocky's list from writer David Dasmalchian. The art is by Jesus Huervas, Alex Squirmus on colors, Ferran Delgado on letters. I read this. It's very much going to be in the same sort of tone and keeping of the Creature Commandos TV show, which I wasn't planning on watching. And having read this, I can tell it's not going to be anything that interests me. So I feel good about that decision that I'm not going to watch it. So yeah, this just hasn't been. This is not the Creature Commandos that I'm not the versions of those characters that I'm used to, and there hasn't been anything for me to hook into here, and I hasn't been a big fan of the art either. So this has been a total miss for me. But anyway, it's on your list. What are your thoughts on it?
First of all, I want to give a shout out to David Desmelchian because I saw a YouTube video of him, and he collects a bunch of pop culture stuff. He's a huge comic collector. So I saw he was showing off to a reporter his comic book collection, and so he's saying, "Hey man, we gotta celebrate these. I mean, he's a Hollywood type who collects." Comic books and pop culture and what have you, and other things and movie posters. I thought that was pretty cool. As for this, I'm enjoying this. At first, I thought after the first issue, I thought, well, this is just basically the Suicide Squad, but instead of putting together a bunch of criminals, you're putting together a bunch of monsters. And while that is what it is, I kind of like I like the character work here. David Dalsmalchian is doing good character work. I like the art of Jose Hervaz, and we learn more about Mina. We get an origin of Mina this issue. And Mina apparently fought 5 years ago. Fought Morgan Le Fay, and she was with a group of people. They all died, and she was infused with trinitite, some rare mineral. And I still think Mina is probably like a Medusa-like character. I guess I'm sure that will be revealed at some point. We learn more about. Vincent, the vampire in this issue. He tried unsuccessfully. There in the opening pages of the story, it shows in the past at the chapel of the Triumph Hill Church of Vincent, the vampire character, trying to rescue his girlfriend Maggie, but unfortunately he's unsuccessful. And while he's in the course of being ultimately defeated by his arch nemesis, he's actually rescued, and he ends up being reluctantly, against his will, being made part of this Creature Commando team. We learn he's got him and Wanda, the werewolf character, they don't get along very well. Dr. West, who's very passionate about she wants to help these monster characters. All the people that are born different, the freaks, the ghouls, the ghosts that are born that way. It's almost like an X-Men theme where Xavier's trying to rescue and get all the mutants under one banner. This Dr. West has sort of a goal to help the ghouls and the freaks of the world, to collect them under a banner to help them. Unfortunately, while Dr. West is helping them, Dr. West herself, she's also a freak, to use her words, and there's also, it's also a little bit illusory because it's General Eiling, the U.S. Army, a secret part of the U.S. Army, using these people, while on the surface it appears to be sort of trying to help them. They're really using them for their own ends and having no problem sacrificing them if need be for their military ends. The issue ends with Zatanna discovering the identity through magic of the identity of the Frankenstein character, Sergeant Elliot Lucky Taylor. And we saw Zatanna show up in the first issue, and Zatanna's involvement ended up killing one iteration of the Creature Commandos. So she's going to make an appearance. It teases future issues as well. And then we've got Brainiac, who Brainiac is being utilized very differently here in a very interesting way. Brainiac is using sort of human beings, or his own versions of freakish human beings, for his minions, and he rejects them because Brainiac has a supercomputer-like intellect, but if they're not up to task to as intelligent as him and his machinations, he eliminates them. I'm not sure exactly what Brainiac's ultimate goal is or plan here, but it's clear that as this issue ends, the Creature Commandos have been put on a mission, even though they're technically not prepared for it. But what they lack in preparation, they more than make up for in visceral passion and violence. So, which is kind of one of the reasons why I like this. I get the sense that the writer, Des Malchian, is not afraid to kill these characters off or to show violence, and I like that. And I think the art is suited toward that, and the color work works well. It reminds me of a 1970s sort of Monster Mash Marvel-like comic book, and that's kind of why I like it. And so it's really grown on me, this third issue. And I want to give a shout out to the cover. I really like the cover. I think it's pretty damn good. So yeah, this was one of my guilty pleasures this week. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just not for me. It's not terrible by any stretch, and there are, maybe some parts of it that are interesting, but yeah, it's just they're not the versions of the characters that I'm used to reading about, and I kind of like those older classic versions, if you will. So, but no, it's not bad, and I did enjoy that third issue more than previous issues. So. All right, up next we have JSA issue number 2. This is written by Jeff Lemire, art by Diego Orlatugi, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands, Ragnarok part 2. It's interesting because everything that happens in this issue, or I should say most of it, with the exception of last a couple of pages, it all takes place before issue number 1. So issue number 1, we saw that. Some of the JSA had been kidnapped and were missing, but we saw that they actually were in the Tower of Fate. We saw that the current iteration of Johnny Thunder, or Thunderbolt, is in a coma. The rest of the JSA are trying to figure out what's going on. So we flash back to 1 week ago. We see them all together. We see them get attacked by the Injustice Society, and it's not that they don't hold their own, but it's a surprise attack to the point where they're after Dr. Fate's helmet, and so he accidentally transports, in trying to escape and protect members of the JSA, he accidentally transports a number of them into the Tower of Fate. So that's him, it's Alan Scott Green Lantern, it's Hawkman and Hawkgirl, the Ted Grant version of Wildcat, and Jay Garrick. But they don't know exactly how to get out, because they don't know exactly where the Tower of Fate is. So, again, first half of the issue, flashback and takes place before issue 1, and then the second half is focused on those members of the JSA that are in the Tower of Fate and how they're trying to escape, and if they will be able to escape or whatnot. And while they're there in the Tower of Fate, the Injustice Society shows up there as well. So I guess the good news is they found the exit, but as soon as Jay Garrick finds the exit, the Injustice Society is coming through the doors to attack. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We'll have to see the fate of Hawkman, who looks like he's been stabbed by the forces of evil that are attacking the Tower of Fate, and then what's going on with the rest of the Justice Society that's still back on Earth in the brownstone they use as their headquarters. Have they successfully been able to figure out where the rest of the JSA went? Are they going to be able to discover that Obsidian is not actually Obsidian, but an imposter, Johnny Sorrow from the Justice Society? So a lot of moving parts. Again, interesting choice for Lemire to, give us the story kind of start in the middle with issue 1, and then the first half of this issue flashes back and gives us context for that first issue, and then the second half gives us what's happening in current time, but only for half the team, only for the half of the team that is trapped in the Tower of Fate. So I'm really enjoying this. I will say that Diego Orlatugi is a super talented artist, and I love what he did on the Jay Garrick Flash miniseries that he did with Jeremy Adams. I'm not as enamored with his art here, and I think it's because there's so many characters. Because he tends to use really thick lines, his line weights are pretty heavy. You can't necessarily have as much in a panel as you would with somebody whose lines are finer, basically. And so you have to have larger panels, so less panels per page and less art in each panel, it can be a little more challenging when you have a team book with so many characters. Again, super talented, and I do enjoy his art, but I think that's part of the reason why these end up feeling like relatively quick reads, because there's just not as many panels per page or as much information or as much going on in each individual panel, because it has to suit the style of Orlatigi. So, but I am enjoying this, and this version of the Justice Society rather has a lot of characters that I love. Plus, getting to see villains that we haven't seen in a while. I mean, Solomon Grundy shows up quite a bit actually in the DC universe, but not this sort of classic villainous version. He's almost like this when he shows up in the pages of Batman. He's just sort of this like sad sort of plant in a way, right? Like he doesn't really have much agency as a character, and he's just sort of the sad being that is just sort of there as window dressing, like a plant. Whereas here he feels like the Solomon Grundy we know from like the Super Friends cartoon and what have you. So yeah, I mean, the fact that it's the Injustice Society, I'm hoping we get some other classic members of the Justice Society showing up, like Icicle and the first Brainwave and all that, because those characters, we don't see them often enough. And I know Jeff Lemire, he talked about it when he was on the show. He's a huge fan of Infinity Incorporated, and a lot of those characters, a lot of those villains would show up there in those pages. So I expect to see him here at some point. Anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I'd actually be curious to talk to Jeff Lemire, because I know that Jeff John's 12-issue Justice Society series, I know that ended after 12 issues. It was long delayed. It was frustrating. But one of the things that the Huntress was doing in that series was trying to recruit a lot of the former members of the Injustice Society, a lot of villains she was trying to recruit into the Justice Society. Here, it looks like Jeff Lemire is sort of maybe ignoring that, or just sort of rejecting that, because clearly the Red Lantern character is clearly in the member of Justice Society. She's not embracing any kind of she's not embracing any superheroism at all. She's clearly all supervillain. So that's interesting. And I actually kind of prefer that. I want Jeff Lemire to do his own thing. It's really nice seeing Dr. Elemental again. The last time we saw him was in the Jay Garrick Flash series by Jeremy Adams. So it's good to see him again, along with the Red Lantern. And you're right about Solomon Grundy. He's just like an intimidating Hulk-like figure here, which I actually like that portrayal here. I think the last time you and I saw him was in the pages of just Poison Ivy a couple issues ago, where he was unceremoniously sort of like easily dispatched. Here he's much more of a powerhouse, as he should be. And I will say that it's unclear to me, it's not clear to me rather, that why we needed to have so much lack of clarity, or part of me, I think it was a little bit wonky, these time jumps all the time. I'm not sure why we couldn't be told this story in a linear manner to begin with, but I think this will read better as a trade, and because we're dealing with so many characters, I'm more than prepared to give Jeff Lemire a lot of real estate in order to tell this story, because he he's clearly having a lot of fun. You get a sense that he knows what he's doing, and that type of confidence does show in the work.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Okay, up next, a book that's not on either of our lists, Shazam, issue number 18, from writer Josie Campbell, Dan McDade, pencils and inks, Roberto Paggi handles some inking assist on pages 11 through 19, Trish Mulvihill on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. This is okay. I'm still getting used to the idea of Billy Batson and Captain Marvel, Shazam, whatever you want to call them, being separate entities. So that being said, it is starting to work for me. I guess I'm just getting used to it, but it's still not good enough to make my top 5. It's not terrible by any means, but it doesn't really seem to be anything memorable happening either. Anything to add?
Well, the new Doctor Savannah, Georgina Savannah, is clearly trying to utilize Cole and all these all these monster villains of the Shazam family to clearly try to break up and attack the Shazam family. That's interesting. I think that it's very kinetic. It's very action packed. Josie Campbell, I think she's really coming into her own with this series, and I actually found it very interesting that Captain Marvel gets so beat up in this issue, and it poses an interesting question. Is it possible to kill Shazam? That's an interesting question, because Shazam is almost in danger of being killed, and yet before he could die, really. He changes back into Billy, and then he seems to get healed again. So that's kind of interesting. It reminds me of Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns part 3. I think it was part 2 that was so reviled, but the one part of it was cool. Is where does a wish go? What happens to Shazam after he goes back and there's no, if there's no Billy Batson, so it sort of poses the question, because Shazam even says, it just that dichotomy that you and I talked about it before, and there's maybe some confusion there. What exactly is the nature of that relationship? It's kind of metaphysical. It's kind of magical between what is Billy, what is Shazam. What if one of them dies? How does that work? Josie Campbell is touching upon that, and in a very interesting way. Whether or not we'll get any revelations in future issues, I don't know. But I like that she's not afraid to go there, and the character work here is actually pretty decent as well. So I said before that this is at some point, this is probably going to be in my top 5. It's not quite there, but we shall see next month.
Yeah, it's a good point. All right, up next we have Little Batman issue number 2, Little Batman month 1 issue number 2, I should say. Written by Morgan Evans, John McKell is the artist, Ian Herron on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters. This is on your list. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is on my list, and you might now some people might find that surprising, but I actually really I quite enjoyed this, because I want to give a shout out to I didn't put the shame on me, Morgan Evans, John McKell on the art, and Ian Herring, Morgan Evans on the story. I think this is a hell of a story. It's very interesting. Little Damian Wayne, he discovers this issue. Damian he defines his self-worth as who he is as little Batman. He doesn't feel he's worth that much as Damian, and so he's part of his character arc here is him trying to discover that he's a valuable person as Damian as well. He's more than just little Batman. He's also Damian Wayne as well, and that's something that he's going to discover, because as he what this issue establishes is that he's not going to be able to rescue his dad, Bruce Wayne, who's been kidnapped by the Scarecrow at the end of last issue. Bruce Wayne had a big gallop, but he was kidnapped by the Scarecrow. But Bruce Wayne didn't. Bruce Wayne allowed himself to be kidnapped by the Scarecrow because he didn't want to reveal himself as Batman. And Alfred explains that to Damian in this issue. Meanwhile, Damian, and I don't know why I found this so funny, but for some reason, I thought that this mysterious brunette last issue that Damian thought was a ne'er-do-well, up to no good in Wayne Manor, that I thought maybe she was Talia al Ghul, or who was she? And it ends up she was the babysitter. So Damian has a babysitter, so that's another arch nemesis. And I really love the character work here, because even Alfred is a little jealous of the babysitter, and they're jealous about the cooking and about about the household routines. And meanwhile, Damian himself Damien himself has a particular way of wanting to do things, and he's just discovering things as he goes. And he also he fantasizes about how cool it would be. He tells Alfred, we should Dad and I, we should reveal our secret identity, because it would be so much more cooler, because they could go and they could, Batman, they could force themselves, they could get whatever they wanted if everyone knew they were Batman. It's a very obviously childlike and juvenile way and immature way of thinking about how cool it would be to be Batman. But this is little Batman. It's exactly what it is. And it sort of reminds me of the fun stuff. It has a Silver Age sensibility to it, but through the eyes of a child, it actually feels a little bit more visceral and real, and it's fun. It's very well done, and it's enhanced by the art here. And I just love this big Batman, not the little Batman, but Bruce Wayne's Batman is really growing on me with that big chin with the beard. I just love it the more and more I see it, and I think it's done really well here, and. In particular, at the end, it teases that next month we're going to get the Dark Tyke rises. Because he'll be a little tyke, and he realizes the only way he's going to be able to find his dad is if he investigates as Damian Wayne, and so that's part of his character arc. And I think it's been very well handled and beautifully illustrated. And I also love the covers and the variant covers as well. So definitely, this was actually one of my favorite ones this week. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it too. From the homage cover to that final page, we're told, like you said, the dark tyke is going to rise, if you will, and that was just a heck of a lot of fun. So yeah, it's just, again, it's a really fun story. I think the art suits it tremendously. The idea of Damien as a little Batman as opposed to being a Robin, I think works on a lot of different levels. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it's fantastic. It definitely has a shot at being my book of the week. And a lot of it to do with the art. Like, the art style just suits the sensibility of the story so well. And it's not one that I was on my radar at all. Like, when the first issue came out, I was like, I don't remember hearing about this. And my understanding is the pre-sales weren't super high for it either, but I think it's probably one that people are finding on the rack. It's Batman. I imagine a lot of the stores are ordering a few for the shelf. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see the sales numbers grow issue over issue, and especially for it to do well in the trade, because it's just fantastic. The characterization, while I wouldn't say it's like juvenile or for kids, but it's definitely all ages, and there's some complex emotions for little Batman, that if you're an adult, you can kind of understand and you have the kind of life experience or what have you. But if you're a kid, if you're a young reader, you kind of can understand it on that surface level, which really works and is relatable for them. And so, yeah, it's a book that you really could, share. I talk all the time, like, there's comics that would make really good bedtime stories to share with your kids. This is one of them. If your kid's a fan of Batman, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, this is perfect to get them interested in reading, what have you. So definitely recommend. Up next, we have Poison Ivy number 28 from writer G. Willow Wilson. The art is by regular series artist Marcio Takara, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. We get a new power, I think, for Poison Ivy. She literally translocates her. She's walking herself in some fog in the swamp. She comes out the other side and she's in Seattle. So hints are it could be to do with the swamp or the fog or some other of the, maybe it's the gray, maybe it's the green, maybe it's Poison Ivy herself who continues to evolve. If you're a fan of Poison Ivy, you're going to be enjoying this. What G. Willow Wilson is doing is really interesting. We've talked ad nauseum about it in the past, about how she's really adding to the character and how Poison Ivy, in a lot of ways, has become a much more relevant character with climate change and what have you. But all that being said, it didn't make our top 5, either my top 5 or Rocky's top 5, but it continues to be a quality book. I almost put it in there. It was between this and one other. And ultimately, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't anything in this particular issue that put it over the top for me. It's like, oh man, you got to read this because, X happened. It's a little more of a setup issue, moving Poison Ivy from where she is in Gotham to Seattle, and then we'll see what comes from that going forward.
Well, I got to hold you accountable. You never thought it was cool that Janet from HR slept with Clayface? I mean, this is a key issue alert.
Slept with Killer Croc, and I no, I'm blocking that out because his skin can't be very pleasant to rub up against. So yeah,
All right.
moving on, Rocky, moving on.
Moving on.
All right, up next we have Two-Face #1. This is from writer Christian Ward. Fabio Veras is the artist. Colors by Yvonne Placencia. Letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. I'll talk about the art first. Fabian Veras, a little bit reminiscent of Christian Ward's art, but not quite as like watercolor. Like his lines are a little cleaner, but it does still kind of evoke that feel, and then the color work kind of evokes a feel of Christian Ward's art as well, maybe just not so brightly colored. But basically what we have here is, the way Christian described it to me when I talked to him at New York Comic Con was Two-Face as kind of a Perry Mason for the criminal underworld. But as we go through and we read this, yes, that's what they're kind of giving lip service to. They're saying they're calling it the White Church, and all the criminals and ne'er-do-wells of Gotham are going to have their own sort of justice system, and they're thinking, or the lip service they're giving is, hey, if we police ourselves and keep anybody from getting too far out of line, we can keep Batman, in check. We can keep him from coming after us in a really diehard kind of way. I think it's kind of foolish thinking. If there's not big crimes to investigate, then Batman just moves down the line, right, to lesser and lesser crimes. But there's always going to be crime. He's always going to be searching. But I get why, in theory, you think it would work. And Two-Face is certainly somebody who would be a part of that white church, that justice system that these criminals want to self-impose on themselves. But at the end, what we find out is really it's the same old Two-Face. Yes, he's giving lip service to this, but he's really out to amass power for himself, and whether that be power within the underworld of Gotham City, or in some way to kind of return to his life pre Two-Face, which is kind of hinted at. I mean, we see that the Harvey persona, if you will, has imprisoned the Two-Face persona in within his own mind, in like a jail cell within his own mind. And he's trying to have a little bit more control. So Two-Face is one of Christian Ward's favorite characters. He loves Two-Face. He loves the duality of the character and what have you. So he's investing a lot into this. He's just writing it, so he can focus all his energy on giving us the best Two-Face story that he can. So I'm really interested in this. I go back and forth on Two-Face in terms of whether I like the character or not. It completely depends on the writer and the portrayal. Like, I think about was it Batman Forever, the Jim Carrey Riddler and the Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face and Val Kilmer's Batman. That as much as I think Tommy Lee Jones is a talented actor, his portrayal of Two-Face was god awful. Like, that version of Two-Face was just terrible. I mean, not to say Jim Carrey, was winning any Oscars for his super over the top Riddler portrayal either. In fact, both the portrayals are pretty bad, but there just was nothing. There was nothing there to Tommy Lee's performance. It just could have been any generic villain. Luckily, with what we're getting here with Christian Ward, and granted it's just one issue, is a much more complex character. Because I think when Two-Face works best is when his two different sides are at odds with one another. And that's definitely what we have here. I thought the art was fantastic. Really strong start from this debut issue for Two-Face. And this is the first time he's getting his own series. So it's good to see that for a character that's been around as long as Two-Face, for him to get a debut worthy of his longevity, I guess you'd say. Anything to add? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I like the fact that Harvey Dent, the good side, the Harvey Dent, not Two-Face, but Harvey Dent is trying to do some good, but he's doing it in a underhanded way with the White Church having sort of court cases against secret court cases regarding the mafia, trying to clean up the streets in his own way, and actually trying to fake it until he fakes it, d- making people believe that, he even changing his voice, his two-faced persona, bugging him, saying, you're even trying to imitate your duality when, they don't even, they're going to find you out. And so I like the struggle because it hints at maybe a fall from grace that, because unfortunately for Harvey Dent, he always fails. Two-Face always finds a way to manifest itself in the duality. The coin, eventually, you can keep flipping the coin, but eventually that scarred side always comes up. And I love how Christian Ward's approaching this, because despite the fact that it might be a losing battle, the coin will eventually flip to that scarred side. Harvey Dent forever fighting against that darker half. I love the metaphor of that, and because it speaks to the dark side in all of us. It's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to go out, Two Face got his own comic. Let me go buy his first appearance. Speculator alert. Yeah, it's Detective Comics 66, everybody, from the Golden Age. So good luck with that.
Yeah, a little pricey.
Yeah, in fact, I went and looked on eBay. I was curious. I'm like, I wonder. There weren't even any on there. Yeah, and this first Silver Age appearance is, I think it's Batman like 284. I think that goes for like $200. So anyway, moving on. Up next, we have DC's Batman Smells Robin Laid an Egg, which is the holiday um, anthology special. It's not on either of our list. I thought the stories were okay. There was none that really even stood out for me, but real quickly, I'll run down the credits. There's a John Stewart story written by Dorado Quick, art by M.L. Sanapo, colors by Arif Prianto, and letters by Dave Sharp. There's a Secret Six story written by Drew Maxey. Art is by Mariana Ignazi, colors by Giovanni Nero, and letters by Pat Broso. A Constantine story written by Ricardo Sanchez, art by Aaron Conley, colors by Yvonne Placencia, and letters by Steve Wands. There's a Joker story, excuse me, written by Alexis Corazano, art and color by Marcel Toledano Vargas, letters by Carlos Mangual. A Dead Man story written by Marv Wolfman, pencils by Paul Pelletier, inks by Norm Ratman, colors by Aaron Angiolini, and letters by Carlos Mangual. That was probably my favorite one. Really liked Pelletier's version of Dead Man, and Marv Wolfman really gave a heartfelt story. There's a silent story, Dr. Midnight in Silent Night, written by James Reed, art by Francesco Francavilla, letters by Dave Sharp. Vixen has a story in here written by Zipporah Smith, art and colors by Andrew Drillin, letters by Josh Reed. And then finally, a Superman story written by Calvin Kasulk, art by Anthony Marquez, colors by Will Quintana, and letters by Pat Broso. So if you're in the mood for some holiday stories from with starring DC characters, it's not a bad story, not a bad anthology by any means. Definitely has a holiday feel. If you're checking us out on YouTube, Rocky's got the Lee Bermejo Dead Man / Joker Santa cover on there. I'm a huge fan of Lee Bermejo. I love Lee, and I typically buy just about every cover he does. I'm not buying this cover. His Joker for me is he does a really good Joker in terms of making him look horrifying, but he's so unpleasant to look at, and he should be, right, because he's a Joker and he's insane or whatever. But like so unpleasant to look at that I don't enjoy the pleasantness of Lee's art. So I won't be, even though that is a great Dead Man. Anyway, moving on. Last book that we're going to talk about in detail. It's on Rocky's list. It's Absolute Superman #2. It's from writer Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval on art. Ulysses Areola handles the colors. Becca Carey on letters. Love the first issue. What'd you think of the second one, Rocky?
Well, first of all, I guess I should thank you. I know you love this series. I love it. I feel bad even that you're letting me go first again. I think I went first last time on this. I I continue to love this story. I continue to love this Jason Aaron's sort of rewriting of an absolute Superman. This is this issue I really liked. I really enjoy Absolute Batman. It's going back and forth, but just we get more background to young Kal-El on Krypton before it exploded. In the Redlands of Krypton, young Kal-El. I'm not sure how old Kal-El is here, but he looks to be. I'm guessing he's maybe 10 or 11 years old. So I'm assuming if and when Krypton explodes and he's rocketed to Earth. However, he gets to Earth, he's going to be at least a preteen or perhaps even a teenager. But we very clearly we get more information about Jor-El and Laura, and about Laura apparently is the one that builds the spaceship, and they clearly the Science Council of Krypton, which is sort of like the governs everything. They're on the outs. Jor-El's on the outs. It's a class system on Krypton. We get more of that sort of mythology, more of that background established. But I'm trying to rank the different parts of this comic that I like. I like them all equally, but I was going to say what I like even more, but at least as equally. I love the relationship between this Lois Lane, who is a member of the Lazarus Corps, essentially. You know, I like this Lois Lane, this short-haired Lois Lane. She's kind of kick-ass, and she's there, of course, and she handcuffed Superman last issue, expecting to take him in, and I got to give full props to Jason Aaron, how he scripted the scene, the ongoing scenes and the transitions with the conversation or lack of conversation between Superman and Lois as they meet for the first time. And Superman, of course, he's handcuffed to her. He doesn't want to hurt her, and he's talking to his suit. He calls his suit Saul, and you know, he's kind of ignoring Lois. He's talking to his suit, but the suit can't seem to destroy the handcuffs, because the handcuffs, which I believe are probably created by the Brainiac character, they're special kind of handcuffs that reform whenever Saul, Superman's suit, sort of destroys or incinerates the handcuffs. They seem to reform again, and so Superman has no choice as he's fleeing being attacked by the Lazarus soldiers. He's got no choice but to fly away and take Lois with him. And that's where the dialogue really takes off. And because Superman and Lois meeting for the first time, you got to think the pressure that Jason Aaron's under. I mean, how do you make this exciting? And I mean, and I say with no hyperbole here, I thought this was really great. I mean, Lois keeps shooting him with her gun, and it doesn't hurt him, but it really, really annoys him and pisses Superman off. He finally tells her, stop doing that, and she finally says, oh, now you're talking to me, because he's been ignoring her, talking to his suit all this time, and he's doing his best, and he's a little annoyed with Lois, to say the least, because he's trying to save her life, or because, you know, because Lazarus soldiers don't care if they kill one of their own in taking down Superman. So I thought Lois was being a little bit naive there, but she seems to be a good soldier in that respect. But I just think it was so well done, and the art is just, I think it's so fantastic. I really, really love this art, and I got to tell you, you really see this art is so fantastic. It's when I really saw the shortcomings of Hayden Sherman's art over in Wonder Woman. I know it's a different story and everything else, but this art is absolutely epic to me. This feels so kinetic, so visceral. The backgrounds are incredible. The explosions look so real. The color work's fantastic. And I don't know how many different shades of red. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm going, you know, but I mean, normally, you know, my wife, we're renovating our basement, and I couldn't tell you the difference between white and off-white and beige or whatever. But here I can see multiple colors of red and blacks and everything. Looking at this comic, it's really, really good. And you can literally, the detail in each of the panels, it's really good. And Lois helps Superman. He's being shot at, they're being shot at, but he helps the masses. He very clearly is, he's very empathetic. He's got empathy. At one point, Lois even does a report to the Brainiac computer that, unfortunately, she gets frustrated and she ends up wanting to write her own report. I won't elaborate on that. I want to leave some things for, I'm sure you'll elaborate on for me. But I thought Superman impresses Lois Lane. He's not even trying to impress her. In fact, at one point, she even makes a note in her private journal that he smells incredible. And and I don't know if it's from the dust, but there's something about the dust. The dust of Krypton sort of actually oozes, or somehow sort of Superman emanates almost a dust of Krypton off of himself, and it smells like burgundy. It makes him smell really good, but it also, I don't know if it's related to the Saul suit or what. I wasn't quite sure, but there's enough there that it makes me ask these questions, and it's very obvious that this Superman wants to help. and he's got the, Lois Lane is clearly, you could tell she could be a reporter in a different life. This is a woman that could be a reporter because apparently she's a really good writer and enjoys writing, much to her surprise, which she discovers at the end. I just thought the callbacks here, the little Easter eggs, the hints of the iterations of these characters in the mainstream universe, and how they're different here and yet really do feel familiar, but are demonstrably different, is what makes this stand out so well at issue 2. I love this, and there are other scenes as well. But people, if you're just buying one DC comic this week, you definitely be forgiven for making it this one, because this is definitely one of the best. Well, I'd be curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't like it as much as issue 1, and I think the reason for that, and I'm a little bit hypocritical here. I called out Absolute Batman for bringing Joker in, like, right off the bat, and it was only one page of the Joker. He just showed up. We barely got him, but I didn't call out the Lois showing up right away in Superman. A little bit different because villain versus not or what have you. But I feel like this issue is this is more of a Lois issue than a Superman issue, if you know what I mean. Like, it's more focused on Lois, and that's not a bad thing. But there is still a part of me that I want to learn who this version of Superman is, and we do, but it's all through the context of what Lois is telling us, because it's narrated by her. She's writing her own report, as you mentioned. So it's all through her eyes, if you will. And she's sort of guessing in a way at the motivations and why he's doing what he's doing and what have you. So that's pretty interesting in a lot of different ways. So I really enjoyed it, but if I had to like pick what was my favorite thing about the issue, it's actually and you kind of alluded to it, it's actually the art in this issue where the book really shines. Like, the art in this particular issue is just so fantastic. Like, Rafa Sandoval just it goes above and beyond. It's amazing. Great color work also. So he really did a fantastic job showing just what this world looks like, how different this Superman is, the over the top action, all that kind of colored through the emotion of Lois. And we can already see that, as cocky as she is at the end of a last issue, the beginning of this issue, and how self-assured she is, and knowing that Lazarus is doing the right things and what have you. And then just being moved and influenced by the selflessness of this version of Kal-El is really fantastic. So yeah, there's nothing about this issue not to like at all. But again, I think the only reason that I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first issue is like I said, just because it's a little more Lois focused. But yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, that first issue, I kind of feel like it was almost a perfect comic, a perfect comic in a lot of ways. So it's a little tough to compare. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this. Definitely consideration for book of the week. Again, the art was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I'm really curious to see where it's going to go from here. We'll have to wait and see. All right, well, that's going to do it for the books that we're going to talk about in detail, everybody. Like I said, there are a few other titles out. There's the first, speaking of the first issue of Absolute Superman, there's a Noir edition, so a black and white edition that's out this week as well. Also, Batman Scooby-Doo Mysteries Season 3 is up to issue number 12, the final issue of the year, before next year we'll start with Season 4. Scooby-Doo Where Are You is up to issue 131. And then in terms of collections this week, we have a few. And, maybe if you're looking for some stocking stuffers or gifts to go under the tree, we've got Poison Ivy Volume 4, Origin of the Species. That's the G. Willow Wilson version that we were just talking about a little while ago. So that collects issues 19 through 24 of the G. Willow Wilson series. Dark Knights of Steel Volume 2. That's the Tom Taylor written Dark Knights of Steel sort of Elseworld story. This collects issues 7 through 12, as well as the Dark Knights of Steel Tales of the Three Kingdoms. special. We've got Aquaman Omnibus by Peter David. That is $150 for 1,584 pages. It collects 50 issues of the regular, so 0 through 49 of that Aquaman, his Aquaman run for the 90s, plus Time and Tide and annuals and a bunch of other specials. We've got Catwoman Volume 4, 9 Lives. That's the Tini Howard run. So that collects issues 59 through 68 of her run of Catwoman, which we enjoy, but it was a little bit inconsistent. Is the best way to put it. Also, we've got an absolute edition of Transmetropolitan from Warren Ellis, Derek Robertson, kind of the co-creator and artist of The Boys. It's kind of where he got his start. Injustice: Gods Among Us Compendium, which collects the entire Injustice run. A lot of that's written by Tom Taylor. That's 1,048 pages for $60. So if you're an Injustice fan, again, that would make a fantastic Christmas gift. Red Hood and the Outlaws Volume 3. That's the webtoon version of Red Hood and the Outlaws. So this is collecting episodes 23 through 34 of the Red Hood and the Outlaws webtoon series. And then we also have a couple of the DC's finest volumes out, which are books that really collect kind of some classic characters and classic stories of those characters. So we've got Justice Society of America for American Democracy, which collects All-Star Comics number 3 through 12. That's from like 1940 to 1942. So those are like really old school type books. And then we've got a Green Lantern, DC's finest, The Defeat of the Green Lantern. And this is from the Silver Age. So it collects Green Lantern, the 1960 series, issues 19 through 39, a crossover with The Flash in issue 143, and then Brave and the Bold number 59. So again, some really classic DC stuff if you're looking for some Christmas gifts for your DC fans. A lot, especially those finest stories, are a great choice. So, all right, time for book of the week, Rocky. I always make you go first, so I'm gonna bite the bullet and go first. This was a really, really tough choice for me, basically between two books. Absolute Superman, number 2, which again, the artwork just blew me away. Love that it focused on Lois, although I am still curious to learn more about this version of Kal-El, his relationship with the armor, that sort of thing. But ultimately, I'm going to go with my other book that I was considering because I think a lot of people are picking up Absolute Superman. I think all the Absolute books are on people's radar. They're doing well in the secondary market, according to cover price and what have you. They're always in the top 10. So I'm going to go with my other book, which is, like I said earlier, flying under a lot of people's radar. Even myself didn't realize it was coming out until the first issue dropped, and that's Little Batman. So Little Batman, month 1, issue number 2. I'm going for that. It's a lot of fun. That fantastic homage cover to Detective Comics number 27. It's kind of laugh out loud funny. It's lighthearted. You can pick it up. You can read it. You don't have to, have read anything. I would even say you could, if you didn't pick up issue 1 of Little Batman, you can pick up issue 2 and get an understanding of what's going on and hit the ground running. By all means, go back and pick up an issue 1 if you can find it. But it's just really new reader friendly and very accessible. And again, I think a book that you can share with your kids. So, yeah, that's my pick. What do you got?
Well, mine is Absolute Superman. I really, you had a great pick, Little Batman. I love it. It was great. But Absolute Superman, I really, really loved. And I thought it was, it felt like it took the adrenaline rush of the first issue and it sort of raised it another octave for me. I was a little bit more excited at the end of it. And I think I'm really, God, I just love Lois Lane. I remember I had a crush on Lois Lane when John Byrne's original series, Man of Steel, back in the day in 1986. That new Superman that John Byrne came out with, Man of Steel. I loved Lois Lane, and I love I just liked the way that he drew her, and I just loved his style of art. And this new Lois Lane, I find Raphael Sandoval, fantastic art, and a short-haired Lois Lane. God, I don't know. It's great. It's just great. And with the CW series of Superman ending, it ended on a I thought on a high note, and it's a great time to be a Superman fan all around. Between Action Comics, Mark Waid, which is he's doing a pretty good job on the Phantom Zone tale, and then this absolute Superman. It's a great time to be a Superman fan, and yeah, it's a and this week was, you know, pretty, again, DC all in. I mean, I'm still enjoying the hell out of it. So it's a great, we're approaching the end of the year in December here. For those watching, obviously, I've got snow falling in the background instead of my usual space background. It's definitely winter here in southern Alberta. I don't know about where you are, my friend, but I'm used to a lot of snow. And if you Americans who are watching are not, well, you can imagine it in the background of these YouTube reviews.
Yeah, it was a little cooler today. I think it was only like 76 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Sunday it was like almost 30 degrees Celsius, 80 something
Yeah.
degrees Fahrenheit here in Phoenix. Yeah, I was outside putting up the Christmas lights. I was sweating. It was hot. So yeah, definitely no snow here in Phoenix. But anyway, that's going to do it, everybody. Don't forget, if you're listening to the audio only, we appreciate it. Be sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to continue to listen to the podcast feed and go back and have access to thousands and thousands of episodes for the Comic Source podcast, just go to your favorite app or podcasting platform, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. But if you are listening that way, you should head over to Rocky's channel on YouTube, where we do this every week, DC Spotlight. We record on Tuesday, drops early Wednesday. Comic Space Boom ! And once you're there, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you know when new content comes out. If you want to hear about our independent books that we've read for every week, then you need to head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. Again, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. And don't forget, all through the month of September, on those independent spotlights every Wednesday, we're giving away a code that's good for 1 free month of the Global Comics app, the premier way to read digital comics. Their library is constantly growing. They have, I think, over 750,000 books, and they're constantly adding new ones. There's a guided view. It's the only app I've ever seen for reading digital comics where you actually can read something on a phone, and it's not too small. So I definitely recommend it. And like I said, every Wednesday this month, and then coming up for the 12 days of the Comic Source, we'll be giving out a code every day, culminating on Christmas, where we're going to give away a code that's good for an entire year of Global Comics subscription. So be sure you head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel this week to check out our Indie Spotlight. A little bit of a smaller independent week, just a couple books to talk about, but it's over there if you want to check it out. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.